Black Country visiting. John, do you have the invocation?
Yes, I do. We are grateful for the privilege of training ourselves for service. Give us open minds, a clear understanding, and a steady purpose to make the most of our talents and lead us into the fields of work where we can best serve Thee. Amen.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday Rotary meeting. Mike, are there any guests this morning?
We have guests. Good morning, Emmaus Rotary. Good to see everyone out here this morning. It's a beautiful morning. We have Fred Buse. Where's Fred Buse? Fred Buse, nice to see you here. Guest for Todd Burlow. Thanks for being with us. We have two new members. I just want to make sure we know that they're here. That they are new members now. They're official. Barry Newhart. Where's Barry? Barry Newhart. I saw Barry here today. He's a new member. And Courtney Kennedy. Is Courtney here today? No, she's not here today, so we'll get her next week. And so welcome everybody. And yes, Fred. Not signed in, Fred. That's going to be expensive. Hello, neighbor. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm Jennifer Giglio, and I have the honor of being Fred's neighbor, so thank you for having me.
Such beautiful neighbors.
I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. Fred, you're such good taste. Welcome, Jennifer. Good to see you here today.
When are you moving? Jennifer, you can tell me we love Fred. Oh, that's too much. All right, moving on. Folks, any announcements from the floor this morning? We'll go with Alexa first.
If any of our newest members, Galliano, Michael Irvin, Laura Grohl, Ashley, Laura, Barry, Courtney's not here, see me for about 4 minutes after the meeting. Talk about classification times.
Eileen.
On Monday, I delivered all the toothpaste that we collected, and they were very grateful for it. I have some photographs that came to my phone. I'll try to get them into next week's newsletter. We did 125 food baskets for East Penn people who are in trouble financially, and they're very grateful for it.
Thank you.
Just a reminder to everyone about the photographs. If you send them to me, we want to start putting them in our photo gallery to have a nice photo gallery for each year. It's a really nice thing to do. So send them to me, and I'll make sure we get them to Mark, and we'll get them up on the website as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Jim.
So this is election day, primary election day. We've got a ballot out here. We're electing 8 people from this list. And next week we'll go down to the final 4. That'll be next year's at-large board members. If you don't have a ballot, raise your hand, and when you're done, give them back to me.
Thank you, Jim. Bryce.
Beef and beer, 2 weeks away. We got to keep pushing, keep selling tickets. Sponsorships are rolling in nicely. It's going to be an awesome event. All the proceeds go towards the Emmaus Rotary Foundation Scholarship Fund. We are having a 3-minute committee meeting after Rotary this morning. And, lastly, if anyone has or knows people who has LED lights, we need some lightings for underneath the tent once the sun goes down. So landscapers or contractors that have LED lighting that would be willing to let us borrow it that night, that would be really helpful. Please reach out to me ASAP if you have anybody who'd be willing to donate LED, I don't know, contractor lights or something like that. Thank you.
Barry.
All right, so Saturday, Canals Homestead. light on the volunteers. I know usually some people just show up. I will send an email out. I wanted to do it last night and get to it. I'll send out another reminder email. It's not real. Gary Rohrbach was nice enough to go over during the day and get an idea of what we need to do. And it really isn't that much. We're just going to be moving some leaves from kind of one end of the property to the other. So I don't expect it to be all that difficult. So hopefully you can join us at 8:30. I might be out there a little earlier, but 8:30 is a good start time. Don't forget, we're going to help Gary's project out with Second Harvest. I'll make a mention. I mentioned it to him. On the sign-up sheet, it said the address was 6969 Silver Creek. It is not. It's Silver Crest Road. You won't find a Silver Creek. I tried last night for a while. And then, so that's it. But I appreciate any help we can get. I know there's a lot of things going on this weekend. Look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Sue?
Speaking of service and sponsorship, you have the opportunity to support the Emmaus Rotary Club because we are the host of the district conference. And that's the District 7430 conference in Allentown, and that's in a few weeks. The district conference, we're the host because the district governor, Cindy, is from our club. This is like Haley's Comet. It doesn't come around very often unless, of course, Stevie Gould wants to be district governor. But right now—
Don't give him any ideas.
But we need some sponsorships from you to support the, not only does it get your name out to over 200 people in a little booklet that they thumb through for 3 days, but it also supports the hunger effort that we're doing. All the proceeds that we can defray costs, and the proceeds from the conference will go to hunger in the whole district. And that was a promise that Cindy made. And then the other thing is that you are supporting the Emmaus Rotary Club as well as advertising. So I will, please let me know if you're interested. Otherwise, I will make you interested with an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Joe?
Okay.
Last but not least.
I've got 3 quick announcements. I'll make it short. Thank you for that. I was at the Kutztown Rotary Club last night to talk up the conference. It was a great dinner. The Fleetwood Club happened to be visiting, so I got 2 for the price of 1. So that. The other thing is one of the members is doing something with wine and beer at the Kutztown. I put a postcard on your table. I think it sounds like it's going to be a fun event, so I would suggest or recommend going to that. And thirdly, the Friends of the Emmaus Public Library is having their annual book sale Friday and Saturday. Come and buy books, bring your money, and also if you want to volunteer and help out with at the book sale or packing and unpacking the books, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Tony, I know you're walking around. When's the regional four-way test?
Saturday at 10.
And where is it being
At
held?
Willow Lane.
Okay.
There are 4 students participating. The North region was kind of light in speech contest participants, so the gentleman who leads the regional contests, he's going to give us Quakertown. So it's Quakertown, Emmaus, Allentown West, and Whitehall, I believe, that are participating. So it won't be a long event, but it will be interesting to see who wins. And I hope we'll win.
Go ahead.
Do you need judges?
We're okay with, anybody can, if somebody really wants to be a judge, you can certainly see me, we should be okay. But if somebody still wants to be a part of the contest, you're welcome to be a part of it.
Thank you, Tony. Moving right along, we call the other apple. Last Friday.
Our guest, the winner. First winner. All right, we got 712035.
035. Congratulations, Melissa.
712018.
Oh, come on.
018. 018, going once, going twice. Oh, John Zelmore, Hadley. Congratulations, John.
Zero, 3, 7.
037, Bill Erdman. Congratulations. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this morning our Sergeant at Arms is out of town. Our Assistant Sergeant at Arms called me last night and she's getting a cold. So we dug as deep as we could. And we ended up with our President-elect, Steve Gould, for Sergeant at Arms this morning. So this should be interesting.
Yes, thank you, Rick. First time, $5, Mr. President. Being up his own.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So, this was fun for me. It's been maybe 2 years since I've been in the role of Sergeant at Arms. So I got my good close walking fetish in, and I had everybody felt my breath in the back of their earlobes this morning. So that was good. And I don't know if I got all the fines, but I'm going to do the best job I can. So my first fine this morning is going to go out to John Chishka. So this is pretty serious. Defaming Rotary property and illegal pin placement. I walked over to him, he was trying to shove his pin into his name tag. Now we know that that's illegal place. So I'm going to say $2 for defaming and also for language, $3. Rose Galliano Phillips, you know, more foul play on the pin. So I walk over and she thinks that her pin sitting next to her coffee on the table is acceptable.
I don't want to rip my clothes.
I don't want to rip my dress. No.
Good defense.
Hey, if you have two steers, you can stick it in there.
First of all, the Sergeant at Arms Emeritus is in the house. And if I let you go on this, I would never be allowed to be in this position. And number 2, there's a nice little magnet for you, which we talked about.
Are you going to give me one of them?
No.
You can buy one. They're generally for sale at district conference, though.
So I'm going to charge Rose $1.
Whoa.
Discount.
She really made the effort, and she had it here, so that has to be worth something. But still not acceptable. I'm gonna break it down to $1.
I have one in my car.
Let's see. Oh, this is a good one for the help of somebody which I won't rat out, but we've got 2 Garys sitting next to the Sergeant at Arms Emeritus. That's gonna cost $2 each. Anybody have an argument on that?
I was going to say, I like when you're Sergeant at Arms.
So, this is another one at that table too. So Karen Hobson, I went over and Dale's yelling at her across the table, "Open your blouse, open your blouse." We all looked at Dale like, is he allowed to get away with this? Open your sport jacket.
Yeah.
And there was her advertising behind her sport jacket. So, I'm going to impede a 50-cent fine. Now, speaking of which, Jen, you're here, and I understand you're Fred's neighbor.
Yes.
My name's Steve Gould of Better Homes and Gardens. Thank you, Karen. Oh boy. So this was an interesting one. Chris Hornan. I mean, what a mess this morning, right? I go over to him, he's got no badge, I don't see a pin, and he's trying to wear some kind of patch of sympathy to try to get away with it. Then he explains to me that it's cataract surgery, and he realized that he is the DG's husband. No fine.
Hey, if he teaches us to make a pay double, make a pay double.
All right.
This is
currently
Sergeant at
$10. fun, other than the one that happened to me off campus this morning. So I'm driving up right in front of the Willow Lane here where the road's kind of steep. And I come up to this Honda. He's like going like 10 miles an hour, slowing down. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? He's sleeping at the wheel. All of a sudden he punches it. So I'm up and like, well, that's gotta be a Rotarian. Sure enough, I come up, and not only does he not put his signal on, he cuts over the yellow line and takes about a 5-degree angle cut in, almost hits the rock coming in and flies up. Our own Dr. Bob Kraus. We'll have to pay today's Sergeant at Arms $2 for that. I was really worried about you. I'm like, did I have a stroke? He's slowing down. He's speeding up. I can't come up with any other fine. Any other
Test to see if
Yeah, I left my badge at home again, and I wore Marge Giussit's. Sergeant Arms.
All right.
I saw it.
So I'll throw in $5.
You're gonna have to throw in some more. I was late, and I'll give you $5 because you did a fairly good job.
High praise.
Cindy.
I'm happy. I'm always happy. I want to thank Gordon Reese. If you are going on Route 22, either east or west on Airport Road or Route 378, we just received a huge in-kind donation, and we have billboards with the Rotary symbol in our concert on those. And Gordon, that was due to Gordon. We now have 228 people signed up, plus additional 48 for just Craig Thatcher. And I just want to remind everybody, with the Craig Thatcher, okay, based on the number of people that we had attend the conference, okay, and the concert, our club is going to get back a percentage of monies that we're going to use for our hunger project. And we need more monies because it looks like Rotary's really taking the lead on this. So thank you, that was really exciting news. But I'm paying $5 because, you know, you gotta help my husband.
I'll put mine away.
You owe more.
Mark.
I was just gonna give
All right. Anyone else happy today? Bill.
I have a recognition dollar. Since John handed me the money directly, I wanted to acknowledge that John Delaware won the raffle this morning. He donated to the foundation. So I want to acknowledge that.
Bob.
I have a very happy dollar. Our oldest grandson, Carter Weichel, is going into all honors classes next year in 8th grade at Iowa. I give Tony full credit because he did a good job with him in Willow School.
He's a great kid. Sorry, President. Happy to say.
Well, I'm always happy, but I wanted to say thank you for everybody that came over to the 1760 house. We did a fundraiser for the March of Dimes. We've done this for the past 5 years. We raised roughly around $1,400. About half of that we're going to be donating to Lily's Hope. I don't know if you guys remember John. He was actually there as well. He's doing pretty well. He's in a wheelchair. He still has some speech problems, but he's improving. He still has a sense of humor, which is nice. And as far as the walk itself, the walk is May 5th. It's a Sunday, and it's being held over at the Steel Stacks Arts Quest in Bethlehem. And so far in total, we've raised close to $3,500, which does not include the 14-ish that we raised over at 1760 house. So that brings us to around $67,000 throughout the last 5 years. So,
Yeah, I'm happy, dollar. I'm happy to see Dave and Nellie not only here today, but at the same table.
All right, anyone else happy? Back to you, Mr. President.
All right, we're going to move along. Alexa, if you'd like to introduce our guest speaker this morning.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce today Barbara Malt. She's a professor of psychology at Lehigh University, where she studies and teaches human cognition. But that's not what she's going to talk to you about today. Barbara started watching birds as a child in Massachusetts at her mother's backyard feeders. She acquired her first field guide when she moved to California for graduate school and noticed that the West Coast birds looked different from the East Coast birds. When work brought her to Pennsylvania, she discovered the Lehigh Valley Audubon Society and has become hooked on birding. She's a member of the executive board of the Lehigh Valley Audubon Society for over 15 years, first as secretary. Currently, she's the vice president and member of the education committee. In her work on the education committee, she gives talks to school groups, camps, garden and outdoor clubs on birds, birding, and creating bird backyard habitat with native plants. I have now met all three authors of this book. This is the first edition of Birds of the Lehigh Valley and vicinity, and Barbara's one of the three authors. This book is now in its second edition and available for you if this talk really motivates you to move around Lehigh Valley and look for our winged friend. Barbara?
Thank you. Great to be here, and always good to get an early start. I don't usually have to give lectures before 9 o'clock, but, but I'm pretty late. Okay, so we'll, I know that we have to wrap up by 8:30, correct? So we'll go pretty quickly here, but so why do we love birds? Why are birds important to us? Well, for probably the thing that a lot of people notice is their beauty. We have a lot of really stunning birds. Seasonal anticipation, so spring is arriving, our spring migrants are on their way, and we have a lot of really special birds that come through the Lehigh Valley in the spring. Learning about birds also is a window into nature and a way of doing science. We can collect data, we can make a lot of observations about behavior and habitat and their relationship and so on. Birds also bring a sense of mystery and majesty into our lives. And very importantly, especially these days, is to recognize that birds also provide what we call ecosystem services. So birds are important in the regeneration of forests, in pollination of food crops and other plants, and in pest control, things like mosquitoes. Birds are also our neighbors. We need to live with birds, and we enjoy living with birds. So some of our backyard favorites that you may be familiar with are right here: titmouse, chickadee, robin. I hope that most of you recognize those three. Also, some of our other more colorful and noticeable backyard birds: the cardinal, blue jay, downy woodpecker. But what you may be less aware of is that there are actually a lot more birds living around us nearby even that are less conspicuous and less noticeable. So right here we have a great catbird, the one up in the corner here, top one. Carolina wren and song sparrow, and these are also common backyard birds that you might not have really noticed as much. The catbirds winter down south, and they're on their way back, and they should be arriving in your backyard shortly. So there are 10,000 different species of birds in the world. About 900 species occur in the continental US and Canada. Of those, 349 species have been documented in the Lehigh Valley. Now, some of those are rarities that only show up once or twice. They're kind of blown by a hurricane or something like that. They just stray off course. But 269 species occur regularly in the Lehigh Valley. So if you look for birds mainly in your backyard, you may know 10, 12, 25, but there's still another 245 or so species out there for you to get to know and to enjoy. So when we look farther afield from our backyards in the larger Lehigh Valley, it's not just songbirds that are out there, but families of birds such as shorebirds, herons, ducks, hawks, quail, and owls. So where exactly are they? Where would you be able to find some of these other types of birds? Well, one thing to appreciate is that there are different habitats for different birds. So we have woodland specialists. You will need to go out into the woods to see certain species that aren't really comfortable in your backyard, suburban habitat or urban habitat. So some of our woodland species include great horned owl. This is a Baltimore oriole. And this is a bird called red-eyed vireo, which is actually extremely common, but likes the woods more than suburban or semi-urban landscapes. We have some lakes and rivers in the Lehigh Valley, the larger bodies of water. You'll find birds such as snow geese. These days it's getting a little harder to not have noticed snow geese. How many of you saw the about like 100,000 snow geese that were in the valley this winter? There's some really huge masses of snow geese hanging out for a while. They're pretty much on their way north by now. This is an osprey, which is a fish eater, so you're going to find it at larger bodies of water. They winter south of us, but they're coming back now. And this is one of many shorebirds that we have around called, again, coming back now from their wintering grounds, called the yellow legs. We also have meadows in the outlying areas. In meadows, you'll find birds like this one that is aptly named meadow lark. This is a horned lark, which we see mainly in the winter. And this is an American kestrel, our smallest North American kestrel. Falcon, smallest North American falcon. We have streams in the Lehigh Valley that are smaller and a little bit more peaceful than the rivers. Here you will find birds like our belted kingfisher, which is a fish eater. This is one of our most beautiful native ducks. It's a wood duck, and they breed here. And this is a swamp sparrow, which you find on the muddy edges of creek banks. We have shrubby habitat, and in shrubby habitat you'll find other specialists. So here we have a few of them. This is a little warbler called common yellowthroat, which likes the kind of damp shrubby areas. This is an eastern kingbird, and this is an indigo bunting. All of these disappear for the winter, but they are on their way back to us right now. We have marshy areas where you'll find, for instance, the barred owl. The barred owl is, unlike the great horned owl, likes dry forest. Barred owl likes wet, so marshy areas. And another one of our warblers that's returning from its winter grounds, prothonotary warbler, really likes to breed in wet areas. We have, of course, forested uplands along the Kittatinny Ridge. And here you find some really spectacular birds like pileated woodpecker. That's the classic woody woodpecker, but that's a woodpecker that really needs large tracts of forest and will not appear in your backyard unless you're really up against a big wooded area. Hooded warbler breeds on the upslopes of the Kittatinny Ridge. And does anybody know what this is? It's our state bird. Yes, ruffed grouse. And not a lot of people see ruffed grouse these days because, again, we are not really living in the woodlands so much, and we fragmented a lot of our woodlands and so on. And they're, again, a bird that likes large unbroken tracts of woods. So as some of the things I've been saying were implying, also different birds at different seasons. So a lot of people think of bird watching in the nice weather, spring and summer, but if you really want to see the diversity of birds that we have here, you have to be a cold weather birder too, because we have different species that are with us in the winter than in the warm weather. So we classify birds in terms of when they're present into several categories. The resident birds are here year-round. So cardinals, for instance, are here with us year-round. And this is a young Cooper's hawk that was trying to take a bath in my bird bath one day. And the Cooper's hawks are here year-round. On the other hand, we have breeding birds that winter south of us and arrive for the breeding season. And that includes the wood thrush here, and scarlet tanager. And they move south to winter. So the red here is their breeding range, and then they migrate through the yellow, and they're wintering in Central America. What's less appreciated is usually is that we have a different set of birds that are winter visitors that spend their winter with us. So for them, we are their southern wintering grounds. And that includes the yellow-bellied sapsucker here and white-throated sparrow. For these birds, they are breeding in the far north, and then we are their southern wintering ground. And then a lot of that 369 species of birds that are regularly documented here are migrants. So they are passing through the Lehigh Valley from their southern wintering ground to their northern breeding ground. They're not going to actually stay with us very long, but we see them every year on their travel north and then again when they're returning south. So that would be species like, as listed here, palm warbler. They're breeding, again, they're sort of high boreal forest breeders. They're going to winter in the southern US and Caribbean, Central America, but they're passing through mid-US on their way in both directions. And last, we have a set of birds that are considered to be irregular visitors. So we see them, we know that we're going to see them from time to time, but it's kind of unpredictable. They show up maybe when breeding's over and they're kind of wandering around. This is a duck called a redhead over here and a gray egret. We usually get some gray egrets showing up every now and then, every year. I'm gonna move through the next few slides pretty quickly because we have limited time. So when we do talk about migrating species, everybody doesn't migrate at once. They spread their migration out. So when you're looking for a particular bird, you need to kind of clue into when their migration actually occurs. So from Hawk Mountain, for instance, they track the migration of all the different hawk species, and you can see that different ones peak at different times. So broadwing hawks really come in a very concentrated dose in the middle of September. On the other hand, bald eagle, for instance, starts actually in mid-August and kind of trickles through all the way into October. Breeding season also varies by species. So most of our birds are breeding roughly from May to July, but some breed very early. Gray-horned owls, you know, if you've heard them hooting a lot in December, they're actually pairing up at that time. They've got eggs in the nest by January, and their young will be out of the nest by about April. American goldfinch, on the other hand, are very late breeders. They breed in July. So what can you do to see more of these birds? One thing is to have the right tools. So binoculars, you generally want 7 by 32 to 8 by 42. You don't want bigger or smaller. Again, I can talk to you more about that individual if you'd like to know more about binoculars, but in the interest of time, we'll keep moving. A good field guide, there are lots of field guides out there that are good these days. We tend to like the middle one, the Sibley. Pay attention to range maps in your field guides because they tell you, that's the maps down here, they tell you for the different species which ones are actually likely to be in the Lehigh Valley. So you get a couple pagefuls of little yellow birds. Which little yellow bird are you looking at? Well, some of these little yellow birds are only western birds. Some of them are in the Lehigh Valley. So that can help you narrow down. As Lexa was telling you, we have a new edition of Birds of the Lehigh Valley out. I have some postcards here if you want a reminder of it. And the book includes, among other things, seasonal bar graphs that tell you for each individual species what months of the year we see it in the Lehigh Valley in particular. So you need to visit different habitats in different seasons. Also, it's a great idea to pay attention to vocalizations. That will help you know what's out there. So, for instance, I don't know if you can hear that. Anybody recognize that one?
That's a bird.
Yeah, it's a bird. That's a tufted titmouse. So if you learn that vocalization, you'll know that you've got a tufted titmouse nearby.
Oh, I love that one.
Chickadee.
Oh, a chickadee.
Yeah, so if you learn those are songs you probably do recognize from your backyard, but if you put the song to the bird, then you'll know which is there when you hear it. Behavior can help you distinguish some species. I'm gonna just move through that so we can get to some other things. Lehigh Valley is great for a couple things in particular. Hawks, we're a real great location for hawk migration, especially if you go up on the ridges, Hawk Mountain, of course, but also other places along the ridge. We're well known for that. People come from all over to look for hawks around here. And right now is a great time to see warblers. So we get a lot of warblers migrating through the eastern woods, and they're some of most bird watchers' favorite birds. They're tiny, but they're very beautiful and they're very diverse, and you have to really crank your neck up to see them, which is sometimes a problem. Okay, so if you want help seeing these birds, look up at Lehigh Valley Audubon Society. We have a program year-round of walks and programs that can help you learn about birds and see them. We also have a listing of places to go birding, and the Birds of the Lehigh Valley book lists something like 56 good places to go birding in the Lehigh Valley with a description of what birds you can see there and how to get there. What I did want to be sure to leave some room for is the bad news, which is that bird populations are in decline. So a lot of our species are really taking some serious hits. Golden-winged warblers are, which used to be not that uncommon 20, 30 years ago, are way, way, way down. Our eastern meadowlarks are disappearing. Wood thrushes, bitterns, our state bird is in decline too. So why is this happening? Several different reasons. One is habitat loss or degradation of existing habitat. So forest fragmentation, which means cutting up the large tracts of woodlands to put through roads, or putting in agricultural fields, or turning some of it into housing, and so on. And also things like just cutting down some of the smaller woodlots, wetland, draining woodlands, turning farmland and fields into, again, housing and shopping malls and so on. Also, we have things like pollution, so even most of the things you put on your lawn, if you have a beautiful lawn, are probably toxic, and are, if not directly affecting the birds, are affecting some of their food sources that might be things that live in the lawn. Another thing that Lexa actually had asked me to be sure to include here for those of you who maybe are architects or plan buildings is that window strikes are a huge, huge problem. So many, many birds die from colliding with glass. There's nothing in their millions of years of evolutionary history that tells them that glass is a thing. They evolved without glass, and now we put glass in their way, and they just don't really recognize it as a barrier. So anywhere that you have windows, you can have collisions. This is a picture of the home of our LVAS president, Peter Sanger, and he has had, until he addressed the problem, a lot of collisions on his glass windows. But this slide points out that it's not even, you don't just have to have big picture windows or sliding glass doors to have this problem. Even a window as small as your basement little cubby window can produce bird strikes. So as many as 1 billion birds a year die on windows in the United States. Some of it is those big glass skyscrapers and large commercial buildings, but a lot of it is on our residences and smaller buildings. So every building, everywhere that there's window glass, you have birds that are dying. So what can you do about these things? About the window strikes, the folks at Muhlenberg College, which our president, Peter Sanger, has been involved in the research on this, they've been developing a number of different solutions. There's a thing called Acopian bird savers that they've worked on, which are, if you look carefully here, they're narrow cords, black cords that you can hang from the outside of your windows. They become not very noticeable to you once you get used to it a little bit, but when properly spaced, they just provide the birds the clues that this is not a space you can fly through. There are other variations on that kind of system. So this is something put out by the American Bird Conservancy, which is some tape that you can put in different patterns across your windows. there's a certain spacing, how far apart they need to be, or rather how close they need to be effective. If you space them too widely, the birds will still try to fly through. So if you'd like more information about preventing window strikes and glass, and also about just general building design, say for new buildings, and how you want to think about designing the glass on that window so that you're not killing a lot of birds on it, please contact Peter Sanger at Muhlenberg, and he'll be happy to talk to you about this a lot. What can you do about the habitat loss problem? There are several different things that individuals can do. One is that it is important to support organizations that preserve land on a large scale, more than most of us can do individually. So organizations like the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, and so on are protecting those large tracts of forest and large tracts of fields and so on, wildlands that are more than each of us owns personally, usually. Also think about the environment when you vote. So some of our legislators are much more concerned about conservation and maintaining healthy habitat for wildlife and for humans than others are. But the other thing that you can do right at home is to build backyard habitat. So to understand what the needs of our wild friends are and to make your backyard friendly to them. So birds and other wild creatures like us need food, water, and shelter. You can install a little bird bath. If you want to go a little more all out, you can put in a little pond with this has a little fake rock that keeps the water moving, which birds really like. Or you can put in even a smaller, large pond if you have the means and the space to do that. Very importantly, you want to provide the right kind of food and shelter. So natural areas that are what birds are actually need have structure from top to bottom. They have a lot of diversity in the species that are there that provide a lot of diverse food sources. When we design our human habitation, we usually strip all that out and provide very little vegetation with very little diversity of species, and therefore very little food and shelter sources for the birds. So what we really need to do is redesign our backyards to have the right kind of diversity, and they can still be beautiful, they can still be good for us to enjoy, but at the same time they provide that food and shelter that the birds need. So an important message in doing that is to go native. It's native plants, the ones that have been in the Northeast for hundreds of years, that are adapted to local conditions, and that also, importantly, create healthy ecosystems that support the native wildlife because they provide the right kinds of food and shelters. A lot of the plants that you find at regular commercial nurseries and the big box stores like Lowe's and Home Depot and so on come from Asia and Europe and Africa and other places, and they're maybe ornamental, but they often don't provide the right kinds of food sources and the right kind of shelter for our native wildlife. So native plants provide diverse food sources like fruits, nectar, insects, and the particular kinds of nuts and seeds that our native wildlife have adapted to be able to digest. Insects, I will wrap up in just a minute or two because I know we're running out of time. But insects in particular are an important thing to think about. We think insects maybe are icky, we don't want them in our yard, but they're actually the critical food for many, many bird species. Only a minority of birds will eat the commercial birdseed that you put out. The majority of bird species need various kinds of insects and spiders and other kinds of food sources in order to survive. So the native plants support the native insect life that supports the other wildlife. And that includes, by the way, butterflies. Butterflies need certain kinds of native plants in order to reproduce. So I'll just leave you with a little inspiration. Sometimes people worry that native plants are going to be unattractive or weedy or something like that. These are some pictures from my backyard. There are lots of really beautiful native plants that you can make a nice backyard out of. These are some bearing different kinds of berries that native birds love. These are some more flowering ones. This is a native trumpet honeysuckle, which is a great hummingbird magnet. They just love that. And some spring wildflowers, more, and some more. And if you provide the habitat they like, they will be in your yard. All these species pictured here and many, many more have visited my backyard, which is in Allentown, and it's not out in the woods, it's not in the countryside, it's just right there in Allentown, and I get some great visitors. This is a Cooper's hawk that was in my pond, and this is a little hummingbird that is not our northeastern ruby-throated hummingbird. It's a rufous hummingbird from out west, and they stray into Pennsylvania from time to time. And this one spent 8 weeks living in my backyard one winter. So we have some handouts here. Please take some. This one in particular is about native plants and trees and flowering plants that are suitable for smaller homes. You don't have to have a big country estate in order to make use of the plants on this list. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. If we all could please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.